Who was Jean-Bédel Bokassa, and why does his reign still intrigue historians and political analysts today? Let's delve into the enigma of Africa's most eccentric ruler. Jean-Bédel Bokassa, a man who ruled the Central African Republic with an iron fist, an unquenchable thirst for power, and an insatiable greed. A man whose reign was marked by a level of eccentricity and extravagance that was unparalleled in African political history. His rule was a spectacle, a theatrical display of power and grandeur that was as fascinating as it was horrifying. From his self-coronation as an emperor, styled after Napoleon Bonaparte, to his legendary reputation for personal violence and alleged cannibalism, Bokassa was a paradox that continues to baffle us today. His rule was a cocktail of violence, opulence, and delusions of grandeur. Imagine a ruler so consumed by his own image that he spent a third of his country's budget on his own coronation, at a time when his people were grappling with poverty and economic hardship. Bokassa's reign was a paradox, a bizarre blend of cruelty and sentimentality, of power and vulnerability. His towering rages were legendary, but so were his outbursts of sentimentality. His rule was marked by a peculiar mix of fear and fascination, a reign that was as unpredictable as the man himself. He was known as the Butcher of Bangui, a man whose reign was marked by extreme violence and a blatant disregard for human rights. Yet he was also a man who could be surprisingly sentimental, a man who could shed tears at the plight of his people even as he oppressed them. And then there were the rumors of cannibalism, whispers that added another layer of mystery to this already enigmatic figure. While these allegations were never proven, they added a chilling dimension to his already terrifying image. Bokassa's reign was marked by a level of eccentricity and extravagance that was unparalleled in African political history. His rule was a spectacle, a display of power and grandeur that continues to fascinate and horrify us today. A reign that was as enigmatic as the man himself. To understand Bokassa's reign, we must first delve into his early life and the experiences that shaped him. Jean-Bédel Bokassa was born in 1921 in the then French colony of Ubangi-Shari, now the Central African Republic. His father was a village chief who was murdered when Bokassa was just 6 years old. Following this tragic event, he was raised by Catholic missionaries who provided him with a religious and moral upbringing. As a young man, Bokassa was a bright, ambitious student who excelled in his studies. He had a particular passion for military history and strategy, showing an early interest in power and leadership. Upon graduating, he enlisted in the French colonial army, where his intelligence and charisma quickly earned him a reputation. Bokassa's military career was marked by courage, discipline, and a relentless pursuit of success. He served with distinction in the French Indochina War, and later in the Algerian War, rising through the ranks to become one of the most decorated African soldiers in the French army. However, his reputation was not without blemish. His superiors noted his temper, his tendency toward excessive force, and his ambition, which at times seemed to border on the megalomaniacal. After 22 years of service, Bokassa returned to his homeland. He had gained significant military experience and had developed a network of influential contacts. However, he also brought with him a deep-seated resentment for the colonial powers that had ruled his country, and a burning ambition to lead his people. His return to Ubangi-Shari coincided with the country's struggle for independence, and the ambitious Bokassa saw an opportunity to realize his dreams of power. He leveraged his military experience and contacts to position himself as a key player in the country's political landscape. The experiences of Bokassa's early life set the stage for his eventual rise to power. His upbringing, education, and military career had shaped him into a man of ambition and ruthlessness, qualities that would prove to be both a blessing and a curse in his quest for power. How did Bokassa, a man of humble beginnings, ascend to the highest seat of power in the Central African Republic? This question has puzzled historians and political analysts alike. The answer lies in a unique blend of ambition, cunning, and a tumultuous political climate. Bokassa's rise to power was anything but conventional. Born into a family of modest means, he was orphaned at a young age and experienced the harsh realities of life early on. Yet, he did not let his circumstances define his destiny. Instead, he used them as stepping stones to his future. Bokassa joined the French colonial army, rising through the ranks to become a high-ranking officer. This was a crucial stepping stone in his ascent to power. His military background not only equipped him with the necessary discipline and strategic acumen, but it also allowed him to build a network of influential allies. The political climate of the Central African Republic in the mid-20th century was highly volatile. The nation was grappling with the challenges of post-colonial governance, marked by instability and power struggles. Bokassa capitalized on this unrest. His strategic alliances and cunning political maneuvers positioned him as a strong contender for leadership. In 1965, Bokassa seized power in a bloodless coup, deposing his cousin David Dacko. He proclaimed himself president of the Central African Republic, and later he declared himself Emperor Bokassa, the first ruler of the newly formed Central African Empire. His audacious power grab was met with shock and awe, both domestically and internationally. Bokassa's rise was not without controversy. His methods were ruthless, his rule authoritarian. He suppressed opposition with an iron fist and was not averse to using violence to achieve his ends. Yet, his reign was marked by a paradoxical blend of brutality and development, making him a figure of fascination and dread. Bokassa's ascent to power was as dramatic and controversial as his rule. His story serves as a stark reminder of the intoxicating allure of power and the lengths to which individuals will go to attain it. Once in power, Bokassa's rule was a roller coaster of highs and lows marked by eccentricity, violence, and grandeur. Jean-Bédel Bokassa's reign was nothing if not eventful. After seizing power in a coup in 1966, he quickly set about transforming the Central African Republic into his personal fiefdom. His rule was marked by a series of wild, often bizarre policies. One moment he was banning fishing in the Ubangi River to protect the hippopotamuses. The next, he was declaring himself the 13th apostle. Yet, the most defining moment of his rule came in December 1977. In an act of supreme self-aggrandizement, Bokassa crowned himself Emperor of the Central African Empire in a lavish ceremony that reportedly cost over $20 million. The event, which was modeled on Napoleon Bonaparte's coronation, signified Bokassa's delusions of grandeur. It was a spectacle that drew both awe and ridicule from around the world. His reign was also marred by a series of scandals and controversies. His brutal suppression of dissent led to widespread human rights abuses. Stories of his alleged cannibalism only added to his infamy. His lavish lifestyle, funded by the impoverished nation's coffers, earned him the title of the African Nero. But perhaps the most tragic aspect of his rule was his disregard for the welfare of his people. His policies led to economic ruin and widespread poverty. His extravagance stood in stark contrast to the harsh realities faced by the majority of his subjects. Bokassa's reign was not without its supporters, however. He was seen by some as a strong leader who maintained stability in a volatile region. His efforts to modernize the country, albeit misguided, were also appreciated by a section of the populace. Despite his fall from grace, Bokassa remained unrepentant till the end, declaring in an interview, "I wanted to make my country happy. I did what I could." Bokassa's reign was a time of great instability and controversy in the Central African Republic. His rule, marked by eccentricity, violence, and grandeur, remains a fascinating study of power, ambition, and delusion. Despite his fall from power, Bokassa's legacy continues to shape the Central African Republic today. The echoes of his reign reverberate through the corridors of power, the streets of Bangui, and the lives of the Central African people. Bokassa's rule, characterized by grandiosity and brutality, left a deep imprint on the nation's psyche. His reign saw the country's political landscape dramatically altered. The consolidation of power in one man's hands, the suppression of opposition, and the culture of fear that was fostered. These are elements that persist in the political fabric of the Central African Republic even today. The social impact of Bokassa's rule was equally profound. His reign was marked by a stark division between the elite and the masses, a divide that continues to plague the nation. The culture of extravagance and greed that Bokassa embodied still finds reflection in the lifestyles of some of the country's affluent class, creating a social chasm that is hard to bridge. Economically, Bokassa's reign was a catastrophe. His opulence drained the nation's coffers, pushing the country into a spiral of debt and economic instability. The Central African Republic, rich in natural resources, still struggles to recover from the economic mismanagement of those years. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of Bokassa is the image of the African despot. His flamboyant and brutal rule has become a symbol of African dictatorship, casting a long shadow over the continent's political narrative. The Bokassa syndrome, as some call it, continues to be a reference point in discussions about power abuse and political excesses in Africa. Bokassa's reign, for all its controversy and eccentricity, left an indelible mark on the Central African Republic and Africa as a whole. His story, a blend of personal ambition, political intrigue, and brutal force, continues to shape the discourse about leadership and governance in Africa today. Despite the passage of time, the legacy of Bokassa remains as potent as ever.